Hello everyone and welcome to NIttany Game Week. It is a special edition. We are on location for the first time, MOUNTARY Casino Resort in the Pocono Mountains, one of our sponsors and our hosts for this week. We are really excited to be on location, guys, in the sports book at MOUNTARY, nonetheless, where there's been a lot of action with college football and pro football and all the other sports as well. As we come into MOUNTARY Casino Resort, Jay Paterno and Tom Bradley. Look, we got a table. You got your hat on. Look at that big smile.
We're casual out. We're all casual out.
Come casual.
Look at that big smile. And not only that, it's the TB hat and some impersonator, TB12, some other guy following along. I mean, that's the original TB.
It's the original hat.
Absolutely. All right. So, look, we got a bowl opponent, so we're going to talk about that as well. But that's an exciting time, isn't it? As you get. So, look, it's an exciting time though, as a team, as you're waiting to figure that out. And obviously, there's years more excited than others because it may be a bigger one. They get the Outback Bowl, but that experience of waiting as a team for the bowl destination, what's that like, guys?
Well, forget that. When I was a kid, I would do, 8-year-old kid, where are we going for New Year's? But no, the team, you finish the regular season, didn't end quite the way they wanted, and now you're looking forward to what's next. And that's, when you lose that last game of the season, that's a long wait to get back on and play and try and get that taste out of your mouth. But I think it's a great matchup and it's a great setup for them.
It's interesting you say that because you can't wait to play again. Yeah. You want to get that taste out of your mouth with the loss, so you want to play. And then in the locker room, when you're not sure where you're going, there's constant badgering going back and forth. No, we're going here. Oh, I hope we go here. It just goes back and forth all the time.
And they're always in the equipment room going, hey, will you guys hear anything? What are we hearing? The players. It's like an office where everybody wants to know what the gossip is.
And you got to remember, you're taking 100 or so kids, right, away for New Year's potentially, or wherever you're going on a bowl destination. All right, bowl opponent, recruiting, and the bowl prep balance we'll talk about, and also potential college football expansion problems in our opening drive. It's the Razorbacks of Arkansas. All these years of traditional football, Penn State's never faced Arkansas.
Never. You look around the SEC, I think Ole Miss, they haven't played. Mississippi State, I think. But other than that, they pretty much play everybody else in the league.
You like the SEC matchups for Penn State?
I do like the SEC matchups. We've been very successful in the past for the SEC matchup.
What do they bring to the table that's different than other conferences, usually those teams? I mean, there's a lot of running, there's a lot of physicality, a lot of arrogance that comes with the SEC, Tom. What do they bring to the table?
They have a lot of pride in their conference. It's one of those conferences where they think, hey, we can beat anybody. So it's a great matchup from that standpoint. And I think the game's a great matchup because they haven't been to a bowl game in a while. Going down to Tampa, that'll be fun.
All right, so it's not just the bowl game, though. This is a really interesting time of the year because you're thinking about your bowl opponent as you start that stuff. It's a big recruiting time. You guys have hit the road as assistant coaches immediately after the last regular season game. How do you balance, Tom, both the recruiting part of it on the road and then getting prepped for a bowl opponent?
I think the one thing, you're on the road, you're constant communications with your guys back in your office, getting cut-ups done, getting things ready. It's not only worried about your next opponent. You better self-evaluate yourself first, see what you can do better, and then go from there. But you want to have stuff, when you come back in that office after being on the road, you got to be ready to roll. Plus you got the practices, you got to be organized and make sure there's finals week, there's a lot of things going on, so you want to keep everything tight.
The other thing about recruiting is self-retention. You got assistant coaches, Jay, that could potentially be leaving. You got to fill those spots. And with the transfer portal, you got to recruit your own guys again to want to keep them, to want to stay with the program. There's a lot more to it when it comes to the portal and all those types.
Yeah, you're juggling a lot more now than used to. And again, you got to be in this kid's house on a certain day. And if the head coach isn't in the house, and if you're recruiting 2 running backs and he goes to that guy's house first and not the other guy's house, I mean, there's so much that goes into it and there's so many egos. When we recruited Kerry Collins and John Sackett, and there was a guy named Frank Costa, and Bill Kenny was recruiting all 3 of them, and he was supposed to go to Costa's house, and Joe said, don't go, I want you to get Kerry Collins first. So Bill had to call and say, I'm not feeling well. I went to Kerry Collins' house and got it done. So there's a lot of moving parts.
There's no more points on the scoreboard for those games, but they're keeping score. Yes. You better believe they are keeping score for sure. All right, so the great conference championship Saturday, a lot of exciting games. Perhaps no finish better than Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship against Baylor. And it brought up a point to you about potential college football playoff expansion. That last play that comes up a quarter yard short, what was the thought that came to mind for you?
We just watching it, the running back from Oklahoma State bounces outside, and it seemed like it took a month. and it was a foot race between he and the other guy, and you're thinking, this could be for a playoff spot. Whereas now, if you go to a 12-team playoff, well, it's a seeding. You know, it just doesn't quite have that same edge and excitement.
Yeah, I mean, obviously kids and teams want to win championships, but it seems that that major goal is the college football playoff. So one way or another, you go into that game, if it's a 12-team, you've already known. And does that would change, Tom, I would imagine, the emotions for kids and players?
I think it would change. I'm not in favor of 12. I'd rather be at 8, but that's just my opinion. I think that's plenty, because you still want to make it exciting that, okay, we got into, not, all right, we're in, it's 12, not as big a deal. Still make it a big deal to get into the playoffs.
And I think the other thing about the 12 is, if you're talking about first round games, now they're on campuses. So let's say, you know, example, for this year, Pitt would go to Notre Dame based on the seedings. If Pitt's going to the Peach Bowl, but if they go to Notre Dame and lose in South Bend on December 10th, they're done. Yeah. And their fans miss out on the whole bowl experience. So I think that's another part they got to balance.
Well, we'll be talking a little bit more about college football playoff and possibilities as we get through December, a little bit more closer to those big games. Right now, it's time for our scrap metal. Tom, we're going to go with PJ MUSTIPHER. Why are you choosing PJ? Got hurt during the season, but you wanted to honor him this week.
Yeah, I sure did. He's a captain. He's still kept involved with the team. A lot of people don't know what PJ stands for. Patrick Joseph MUSTIPHER. It's interesting to do research and you get to follow these players a little, but didn't realize his brother Sam was an offensive lineman at the University of Notre Dame, and his father, Sam, also played at West Virginia. But, you know, I think that he's had an outstanding career. He's still committed to this football team and working with the team. And it's hard to do when you're a captain halfway through the year, calling it quits.
All right, still to come, these guys are going to start preliminary scouting report on the Razorbacks. We'll also talk about some numbers within the numbers that you'll find really, really interesting. And as we go to break, a little bit more about our host this week. We're at the Mount Airy Casino Resort in the Pocono Mountains. Big supporters of the NIttany Game Week. Here's a little bit more about our hosts.
So one of the things that we've been really doing for a number of years is reaching out to Penn State alumni. Being a Penn State alumnus myself, Penn State alumni are very adventurous. They really enjoy being outside within Pennsylvania. And we've really connected with them and invited them to visit us right here in the Pocono Mountains. And there are thousands and thousands and thousands of Penn Staters. We have about 30 million people visiting us every year from all over the United States. And a lot of them are Penn Staters, and we just love to welcome them here to the Pocono Mountains.